Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Brilliant. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone, to our panel on game design today on Sunday at IndieDevDay. It's very lovely to see such a big audience for today's panel. My name is Misha Campello Gramelius, and I will be the host and moderator for today's session. The session will follow a pretty easy to follow structure. We'll begin with introductions, then we'll have a lively discussion following some setup questions, and then once we hit the 40-minute mark, we'll open the floor so that the audience can participate in shaping today's conversation by asking questions. If anyone in the audience feels uncomfortable asking their question in English, feel free to do so in Spanish and Catalan, and I'll do my best to interpret the questions for our panelists here today. So without further ado, please get your hands together to welcome Anna Guxens first. Anna Guxens is the co-founder of the indie studio 3 Bytes and is now an associate lead of RPG design at Larian Studios, contributing to projects like Baldur's Gate 3. Following on, please get your hands together to welcome Rene Rother. Rene is the developer behind Children of the Sun and has an extensive experience at game jams and has studied graphic design, so it's coming more from an art background and ending up into the design industry within the video games. And last but not least, we have Eduard Lopez plans, so please get your hands together for Eduard. Eduard is the principal designer and also the ambassador of IO Interactive and has a rich background on franchises like Hetman and Project 007, The Witcher 3, and Cyberpunk, amongst others. So thank you very much, panelists, for joining us today, and I hope we have a very lovely discussion around topics such as creative processes, the challenges of game design, and perhaps even the future of interactive entertainment. To begin with, and to make sure that our audiences are all on the same page, I would appreciate it if you could give us a brief explanation of what game design looks like. What does it entail? Would you like to start first?
Sure. Thank you for coming here and thank you for inviting us. So what is game design? The role of game design may be different in different companies and different projects, depending on the size and the structure and just the way we work together. But usually, we are the people who are responsible for making sure that we design gameplay mechanics, we design how the game works. What are the challenges for the player? What is fun about this game? How the missions are structured, right? There's a lot of different types of designers who take care of just designing the experience. Usually people ask me like if I design the visuals. No, it's not graphic design, it's designing the experience of the game, the gameplay experience.
Brilliant. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think the word design already implies that it's a very theoretical process, like a very thoughtful process. Which it doesn't necessarily need to be. It can be, in most cases, I guess it is, but then there's also this other way of approaching it, of just having a feeling for it. What do you think feels good? And what do you think players will enjoy to do? And I think that's also an important aspect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, just to add to that, because I agree, the word process, I think it's very important, because sometimes it gets the impression design is an idea of a mechanic, but it's accompanying it throughout development, because it's a whole process of understanding how the players will experience it in the end, adjusting, making sure that the final feel of it is the actual right one.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I think this gives a pretty specific idea of what game design looked like. So now we're going to move into our first question. What do you see as the most critical elements in creating a compelling gameplay experience? This time we're going to begin from the other side.
For me, it's finding the fun of it, finding what's engaging about it. When you're designing a game, it doesn't necessarily need to be fun in the haha kind of way. It needs to be fun in the way that your heart is engaged. So we try, at least more personally, I try to design games that appeal to the player's emotions. So that's how we make the experience recognizable, resonate with all kinds of different people, right? And that includes elements of narrative design, includes elements of the game mechanics, how they support and how they talk to each other. So making sure that this conversation is interesting, it's the relationship between different elements, because design in isolation will end up being, it will not include the player as part of it, so make sure that you can include the player as part of the design itself.
Brilliant.
Yeah, you mentioned that games, like that you're talking about fun, how to create fun, but then on top of that, it's also you don't always want games only to be fun. Everything is about contrasts. There's moments of fun which is amplified when there's moments when it's not so fun, which you can do on purpose. Like let's say you have a game where you have a boring job, so like then the gameplay should also maybe be part of it to make it boring to play for this moment. And then when you, I don't know, I'm just making up this game now where you then jump out of the window and become a superhero, and then it's exciting, and then the gameplay can also become more fun. And it's also a conversation between narrative and gameplay, and it's not just always fun. Because then if it stays the same the whole time, it's also boring. Like fun all the time is also boring.
Absolutely, keeping like a balance and a flow of contrast feelings, isn't it? That control over the experience of a game must be very tricky. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, very interesting everything you said, of course. I would like to add, like when you start thinking about the game mechanic or experience, you can start thinking from the emotion side of it, like how do you want the player to feel? How do you feel when you think about it? Or you can start from the logic side of it. How does this fit the rest of the game? How does it combine with the mechanics? And actually, you have to find the balance. You have to think about both. Like it's very important that you feel engaged. Like you, as a designer, as a player, you want to engage with these mechanics, but also they will fit. They will make sense. Everything will be tied together. Something very important as well is making sure the players can understand what's happening. So you provide clear signs and feedback. Thank you very much. Okay. So yeah, you can provide signs and feedback and make sure that you try to make the game that is consistent. So players know what to expect. They can learn it. They can feel they have certain amount of control into the experience.
Brilliant, thank you very much. This is such a thorough exploration of this. We're going to move then to our next question, which is how do you balance or consider innovation with the expectations of players in your game design process? So the expectations that players may have versus what you want to innovate in. How do you consider this topic? We're going to start from the middle this time.
It's a really tough question, because how do you plan innovation? I think you cannot. Like it can only be the result of exploration, of trying things, of making game jams, just throwing things together which you think are stupid, and then maybe finding something in there which is surprisingly fun. But planning innovation, then I think you're approaching it from like a wrong angle. I feel like that doesn't really work that well usually.
Brilliant. Would you like to chip in?
I think it starts with being a player yourself, no? Because I play a lot of games. I'm always watching, okay, what's this about? And as soon as I see something new, I get so inspired, like, oh shit, I haven't seen this before. That's actually interesting. That's calling to me, right? And it kind of gives me the urge of like, I want to also try to do something that I haven't seen before. And you understand the player expectations, right? People want something that they can be engaged with, that they can feel familiar, but also that kind of scratches that edge of like, oh, I haven't seen that before. What's that about? So for me, it starts with being a player yourself and trying to do what you're missing, right? So you're looking at the games, oh, I wish I could play a game like this, and it's not there, so you're trying to seek that and trying to, okay, I'll do it myself, right? So that's kind of perspective.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, I think we usually talk about some sort of a rule about innovation and expectations, which we call like the 80-20. It's not really like 80%, 20%, but it's like, let's try to make an experience that is 80% familiar, that players know what to expect, that they understand how it works already, and try to put 20% of innovation. Of course, it doesn't need to be 20 or 30, and as Rene said, planning innovation is hard because innovation happens, right? But when you're making a game, it's like, okay, let's try to not make something super weird that players have never played and don't expect anything, and don't make the same experience they already have played, changing something, right? Try to find the right balance. This balance is important. Then in terms of like balancing player expectations as well, this is hard. So the first thing I learned when I started making video games professionally was, okay, I'm not going to make the game I want to make. I need to make the game that the players want to play. I need to make the game that the company is making. I need to make a game that a lot of different people have expectations about. That was the first thing I learned. The last thing I learned is you have to make the game you want. But it's not because you start making the game you want to make, it's because the game you're making needs to be the game that you want to make, right? You need to be passionate about your job and think about the people who will play this game. How will they react to it? How will they fall in love with what you're doing, right? And that's how, with your passion, will do the best possible. Yeah, I think this will be my advice.
I think that's completely fair, and it does connect what you were saying on you are a player. You begin as a player, so if you love the game you make, you are the demographic too in it, isn't it? So that's lovely. Considering that the conversation is going into very more mental topic around it, would you have any examples of how this process has happened in your personal experience that you'd like to share?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, of course. If you have any examples in which this negotiation has happened in the games that you worked at that you would like to share.
Some example in particular. Well, I think like it's more than a particular example. It's something that happens when you work with different people. Like we work with so many talented people with different ideas, different backgrounds, different personalities. That usually everybody wants something out of this game. We all want to make our game somehow. And when we want to make, like the game is the main thing, we of course want to succeed with this game, but the way we understand the success is different. So what I interpret that players want to play and they will love is not the same as anyone else thinks the players want to play. Of course we can have similarities, but it is always like a process of finding, understanding what we all mean, what do we really want to deliver. It's very important to have like a very clear direction. It's like, okay, this is the game we're making. These are all the pillars. This is why we want to do this and that. And then listening to feedback.
I think events like these are great because then you're trying to validate your idea, right? Like, okay, I've done a prototype. Does this work? Are people having fun with it? Do people come back to play again, right? This is a great place to get touch base with the players. Also, other developers who understand the process, they understand, okay, that's a prototype, so they can envision what a final game would look like from this, right? So coming to events like this is great to test out these first innovations, to start trying out, okay, can I make a full game out of it?
Yeah, it's very important to see like if the players, first of all, do they like what they're playing? Do they see the potential? It's like you always should respect, if the players don't like something or don't understand something or fail at something, it's your fault as developer. Like they don't like it, that is the ultimate truth. Or they like it, that's the truth. And then how to address what they don't like, that is up to you. Like usually when we talked to you before about innovation and expectations, if you ask fans how would they make like the new iteration of this game, they have some thoughts based on what they have been playing, but you have to also come up with new solutions, new challenges they don't expect as well. So always listen to when they don't like something, when they like something, and you have to figure out how to address it with your own creativity as well and your colleagues.
It's also important to know that you don't want to please everyone. There are certain people you maybe do not want to please actively because you will just know that they will not like what you like. Like it's always worth, I believe at least, to go into a niche. And then when you're lucky, this niche is very big and it works out. And if not, then okay, that's it. I have the opportunity. I'm like privileged that I'm working by myself, so I have much less pressure. But that allows me to just figure out a niche and just run into it, and don't be afraid to alienate some people. Like it allows me to go into some extremes that you could not do as a big studio. I only have one mouth to feed, and that's doable. So if you target a niche group, what I believe is, it's to me at least creatively more fulfilling to have a few people who enjoy it a lot, and then have a few people who really don't like it. That's fine. Apart from this medium range, everybody thinks, it's okay, it's a good game, I guess.
I completely agree, because those people who think that your game is a 10, they're the ones who are going to buy it. People who think your game is, an 8, a 7, they might not get to that point, because there's just so many games to play at this moment, right? So you really want to go for the people who love your game.
Yeah, we're talking about marketing now as well, actually, because that's how you stick out as well. Just by making something unique. Whatever unique means, that's a problem, but everybody needs to figure it out for themselves. But just when you put a lot of your own personality in there, I think that's a very helpful and useful thing to just do things that you think are good, that you really like. Like, just figure out what you really enjoy and then do it. Which, again, doesn't really work well as a studio, I guess, because then there's lots of opinions, and then there's a big discussion. So how do you do that? I do not know.
Well, it's a great point, and actually, yeah, totally right. Like you find your audience. Like when you talk about the niche, who are the players who you want to play, and then that helps also the team when you have a big team. Like no, our players are used to playing these games. They want this. They enjoy this stuff. We're making the game for this audience, and then get feedback from this audience. Of course, you always, when you succeed, you want to always increase your audience. Always want to like appeal to everyone, but never forget what makes you special, right? And go all out.
Yeah, and that also means ignore some people's feedback, because otherwise, if you there's lots of feedback coming at events when you go, and they will tell you or not tell you, and then usually at events people are nice to you. Nobody tells you, oh, this is boring. Barely anyone does it, or tells you, oh, I don't like this, I don't like this. Worst case that happens, people stand up, shake your hand, was thank you for letting me play. So there's also something you need to be aware of. Whose feedback do you actually value? So like events are useful to watch people, I think, and get feedback from that. But from talking with them, I don't believe you get too much out of it. Unless you're really selective and you know the person, you know that they're going to be honest and tell you everything, but that's very likely not going to happen. Yeah.
I completely understand. It can make a bubble, doesn't it, of too much positive feedback that may not be honest. Absolutely. Well, this has been very insightful. A bit inspiring and empowering, I think, of coming into terms with expectations of what your audience says. Trying not to please everyone, but instead finding your perfect group that you resonate with, and your game does too. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. We're going to move then to a bit of advice this time. Would you like to give some advice on how to start the creation of a video game considering vision and design? As I'm sure many people in the audience have come to this panel because they're interested in starting their careers within this field. Would you like to start?
I really don't like to give advice usually, because so everyone's path is very unique,
Yes.
and everyone's game is hopefully unique.
Yeah.
And you need to figure out what do you like about what do you do, and then figure out how to amplify it. How do you don't let it be getting watered down? Maybe you have an amazing prototype and it's fun, and you get all this feedback coming in, and suddenly it's just becoming this mushy, like some weird thing, which then you don't enjoy yourself anymore. I think it's just, I don't know, it's maybe boring, but it's just when you think it's a good idea, believe in it, and then go for it. And then at some point you need to figure out, like, oh, maybe it's not the best idea. And then, I don't know. I really don't know. It's like, you need to believe in yourself and try it, but also notice when it's not working out.
Absolutely.
And then just like prototype stuff, do game jams, try things, throw things together you don't expect to work well, and then see what happens.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to being realistic, understanding your own strengths, understanding what you can and cannot do. So making games that you can do. So understand you, your team, your capabilities, right, and make something that really plays into your strengths, because that will ensure that you can do something good, something whole within itself. No.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think like when you start making a game, you can usually start, like there's two types of people. People who think about a universe, a story, the narrative. What do I want to tell about? Then I would say, okay, when you start this way, ask yourself, could you write a book to talk about this? Would the book be enough? Okay, if it's not enough, then could the movie be this thing? No, okay, then you need to go like, okay, why do you need a game to explain this? Because it's going to be amazing, right? But think about what it makes special. You can also start thinking about the gameplay. Which awesome gameplay do I want to make that I think it's going to be great? Like, because I tried and I found this is incredible. Okay, how can you address this in the narrative? Usually, like we spend a lot of effort in producing or pre-producing the concept of a game. Like it's important. Like when you want to spend like a lot of money, like you want to make AAA game or AA, spend a long time thinking about the game, polishing the concept, validating with different people, and then some tips. Like actually, I met a person who has a company who actually helps companies do this pre-production of the conceptual phase. So even before you work on the concept, it's like before you do that, what do you need to do? And it's like find relatable characters, find the story that you can repeat, find like a loop that you can do again and again and again. Because if you are successful with this game, you want to maybe make more, right? And then the same thing with the gameplay. Like how is this gameplay familiar and innovative? Like how many people are interested about this stuff? There's a lot of of thought you can put in here in creating compelling stuff, and then again, getting feedback, validating, and making a lot of gameplay fast and trying cool things. Also see like what gets people around you excited. And then to finish this, also usually what happens is that 90% of the times, you don't choose what game you're making, right? You find a job, and then they're making a game, and you work for this. So find a game that you like, if possible. Sometimes, like, okay, like things are good. We still need to negotiate with some publishers, with some investors, to find something that they actually want us to make. And even if you make your own game, sometimes, like depending on the team, it's like, okay, I want to make a game, but maybe I need to be successful, so I also need to think about. So it's never like just do everything you want. Absolutely, like think a lot about what you want to achieve and how to do it.
Yeah, basically pick a theme and then try to build everything around it. What's the story? What's the negative? What's the gameplay? Pick a theme.
Yeah,
I guess
that's a good stuff. Also, like when you find the core, we're talking before about this, like when you find the core of the experience that is really awesome, like protect this core. Like it's really cool that you find a core, and then everything else you build needs to build around this thing, needs to make this core better. Like if something is missing, add something that's missing. If something's not working, fix that stuff. But it's easy sometimes like to start building the mechanics that are super awesome because you have, I don't know, like a shotgun and a handgun, and the game is about this. But then you come up with a rocket launcher, and now the rocket launcher is amazing because you can shoot at the ceiling and the things destroy and fall on top of the people and kill them, or you can control the rocket launcher, or you can do 100 things with them, and then all of a sudden the shotgun and the handgun are not cool, and everything you build is not cool. So that was a bad idea, right? Like build things that complement.
That's also key, to keep things simple, understanding the core, because I see a tendency always to over-complexify adding more features, because they're cool on their own, but do they really contribute to the game, the experience that you really want to make, right? Can you jump, because you can jump in all the games, does it actually contribute to your game that you can jump, right? So stuff like that that you really want to pay attention to make sure that they don't distract from the actual core experience, the fun that you really want players to focus on and to get all the attention.
Yeah, like everything is about the game. And also I would advise like play lots of games. Like find references. When you want to make a game, find similar games. Even if your game is completely different, play all the games to understand what were their challenges. Why did they design these things like this? Like you can learn a lot by playing games when you like focus on to why. Don't be afraid to just see what mistakes and successes the others have found. Very important.
Absolutely. I think it's a very interesting conversation. Something that you guys are touching on a lot is semiotics, really, the creation of meaning, and how we create meaning in the interactive world of video games. So keeping a central theme and building around it artifacts that complement it, and basically give it an effective communication and interactiveness to the player. It's a very practical approach that I'm sure that a lot of people will appreciate in designing their own games in the future. Thank you so much. I would like to also ask, because I think we have a little bit of time for one last question. So what challenges have you faced in the design process, and how have you navigated them? So are there any challenges you would like to discuss? And if you had navigated them and overcame them, what was the story behind those? Would you like to start?
Yeah, I think there's like, I was thinking about like a couple challenges that repeat often, especially like in big productions. One is like, of course, you see like games, they look better and better every year. Like it's now hard to increase the quality, but it's always increasing. Even if we don't notice, like if we play a game 5 years ago, there's so many improvements. So a classical trap is to start obsessing about, for example, animation quality. Like how does this look in the screen? Like the anticipation of a punch, the preparation of a jump. But this sometimes eats into like what is the feeling of the player. I want to press a button and I feel I punch someone when I press the button. If I put a lot of anticipation, I no longer feel like I'm punching. I feel like I tell the character to do an action. So always finding this compromise of how can we improve, but do not obsess about quality. Foot sliding, that's a typical thing that I have obsessed over different projects. Like, no, the feet need to be like always perfectly aligned to the ground. Like you have to plant it. No, you have to make the game fun. The most important, the game needs to feel good in your hands. And it's never going to look as good as a movie, because in real life, for example, when you are running and want to jump, you know you want to jump few steps before, so you prepare the steps to jump. It looks, of course, natural. In a game, we cannot predict that. The player presses the button, it needs to happen. So this is a classical challenge we find in design, obsessing over some aspects on quality. We could say the opposite. Sometimes we obsess with complexity and realism, We want to make a system that has this, and like the walls will break and will fall depending on this, and if it falls on top of you, it's going to hurt you. Like maybe sometimes complexity doesn't mean depth. It's important that the game has the right depth, but not just over-complexify, over-systemify everything. Making a game more realistic doesn't mean it's a better game. Some games try to be simulators. That's what they want to do, right? But for most games, it's not that. It's just making it believable, making the player be able to like jump in there and believe they're in this wall and just enjoy the experience. It's not just, like we said, it's not just having fun, haha, it's just like really enjoying what you're building. And another challenge that it's also like, sometimes it's hard to spot, but it's also frequent in game development is a lack of cohesive vision or direction. Like when we talked about like when people understand different things. It's very easy like to have a team of 10, 20 people that are really well aligned, but when you have 10 programmers and 10 designers and 10 animators, maybe they start to understand, between themselves they align in groups. So it's important that the directors, they always can provide this vision. They can always like be mindful of when something is going out of what we want to do and reconducting stuff, like really finding references, explaining what the game is, playing together. So yeah, like clear vision. And we talked a bit before about that. When we design, designing is not a democracy. Right? It's like, or it's not a compromise where everyone in the team needs to be happy, and everyone like we do like a mix of everything. No, you need to find we need to find the needs. Like the game is about this. We need to make the choices that will deliver the best experience that we want. If you find that the experience you're building doesn't make sense, you have to correct it, and maybe you can change, right? But it's not like sometimes you try to please this person or that person a bit because we work together and you want to be happy. And of course, it's very important that everyone is happy and committed, but remember that the game needs to be awesome. So these, I think, are some of the challenges that repeat over game development.
So I guess one of the mistakes that happened to me, so coming more from a game jam kind of background, it's like you make a game, it has one mechanic which is strong or not strong. So it's like you focus on one mechanic, it's playable in 20 minutes, people maybe enjoy it or not, whatever you throw it online, done. But it's one mechanic. So that's something I had to learn also then over time, that if you want to make a real game, you need more than one mechanic. It's not enough because it just is boring. I mean, it's just not interesting. So we talked about contrast before. That also needs to be part of the core gameplay. This thing that it doesn't only need to be, oh, you're playing some RPG, you're weak and you're getting stronger. Like, it's also not interesting. I mean, it can be. But so you need to find a path, you need contrast all the time, and that also during gameplay. And then it was very easy to just throw things in there and just make it again like this big pile of, okay, there's the game mechanic and then things happening around it, which then also again, it became too much. It was again boring because it was too much. So it's again stripping things down and trying to maintain focus while not being too focused. Like you still need to be kind of open to experimentation along the way. And like what else can you do with this mechanic? What other opportunities do you have? And what else can you add in over time to keep things interesting? Because it's very easy to make something that just at some point is fun, it's interesting for a bit, but then it gets boring at some point. And it's also then very easy to come up with something to keep it interesting, which then turns it into a different game. And that's something that can very easily happen, that you just at some point at the end have a completely different game than you start with in the beginning, which can also be your goal if that's what you want to do, cool. But it can also be an accident, and you can lose focus very easily when you want to make like a full game with a full experience, which is interesting or exciting, whatever, throughout the whole way.
Yeah, I would actually really like to expand on this because it's a very interesting topic that we encounter often. It's like, my advice would be like actually something I learned when I was studying video games in the master degree is like, I was told like the rule of the 3 threes. Think about your game, even from conception. How is it fun in 3 seconds gameplay, which is when you swing the sword, when you shoot, when you loot stuff, like 3 seconds, how is this super fun? How is it fun in 3 minutes? Like imagine like how is one mission fun? Like how our game provides entertainment for 3 minutes, 3 hours. What is the higher level? And this was like, of course, that was many years ago. Now I would say like the 5 or something because you need to think about your game. How is it fun 5 weeks later, 5 months? Like, how can you create an experience from the beginning that is not just like fun punching, but you have the different layers of how this game is going to be interesting for the whole experience. Like if you want to make a game of 20 hours, think from the beginning how 20 why is it going to be fun for 20 hours? It may be the narrative, but it should be like also something else that you get to discover and get challenged about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think one of the other challenges we always face is along player agency, right? Because a lot of games, the player freedom is what gives them the most fun. That's what makes games a game rather than a movie, right? So knowing where to put the boundaries or the limits to this player agency, this player freedom, because you want to give them as much as possible, but you want it to be meaningful. Because having freedom without having any outcomes or results out of it will not be fun, will not be engaging, because it feels like what you did didn't matter, right? So you want to give as much freedom while making it all matter. So I think this is one of the bigger challenges that we face. And ways to go about it is making games that are systems heavy, right? Because you have systems, when you know them, you have certain expectations. You know that when I do this action, this outcome will happen. And then when it combines with this other action, the results change, right? So you start setting a tool set for players to act in a certain way. So you give them as much freedom as you can with these tools, but you know that outside of these boundaries, they won't be able to act. So they understand the expectations of it, no? And for things like Baldur's Gate RPGs, they are huge, right? There's a lot of possibilities that you can do. And we always need to balance, okay, how much do we account for players to do? Because players can do a lot of things, and it's fun, right? So we want to reward the smart combinations that players come up with, rather than just breaking the game because you're glitching over a wall. So knowing, reinforcing the sort of systems that you want players to have fun with and have their agency, their choices with. I think this is the biggest takeaway that I have on this challenge, I guess.
Brilliant.
Super important. Yeah, totally agree. Actually, I remember now I saw a talk one day that was super cool about someone talking about play agency, saying play agency doesn't mean freedom to do anything. Agency means like providing the player to what they want to do, actually. Like, he was giving some examples of like, this game is almost linear, but actually has a lot of agency because you get to do what you really want. Super important. I agree.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been very insightful. I think now we've hit the 40-minute timer, so we're going to open the floor for questions. Would anyone like to ask a question? We have one over there first.
Hello? Okay. I have like 3 questions, if it's not a problem. One is about the ending part of the developing a game. One is at the beginning, and then one about the whole process. So I think these are the kind of what's most difficult about developing a video game. The first one is when you ship a video game, what's your thinking process about learning about what worked and what didn't and stuff like that? Like, how do you ensure that you know what mechanic didn't work and why people didn't enjoy that?
Okay, I see. So I think that the first thing we do when we release a game is go online, read the reviews, read the comments, check the community. We have people dedicated on understanding what is the feeling. So the first thing is understanding what the players feel about the game. Like, we usually put a lot of effort in before releasing the game, doing some play sessions, like finding like companies who work into gathering this feedback. So hopefully there's not too many surprises, but sometimes at the end, until the game is released, you don't know if it's how great or how bad it's gonna be. So the first thing is like listening to people. Then during development, there are things that we already know went wrong. Like, usually we don't have time to address this problem or that. It's like, oh, we really wanted to create this mechanic, but it was impossible with this system. So when we plan for the next games, we already like have a lot of things we want to do. But I think, yeah, when the game is out, listen to your community. Listen to what the players want to do. And then if you can fix their concerns, that's amazing.
Also, one thing, you can never know. You will never know. There's no truth that you're trying to find. You're just trying to do something, and you hope that people like it. And what you're basically asking is it commercially, do people like it enough to buy it? I think that's basically the question, how I understand it. And you will not know. Like, there's so many games on there who are doing it right, and they don't sell for whatever reason. It's like there is no truth. You just need to do something that you believe in, I guess, like play test it and do all these things, but you will never find a point where you're sure.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's
that's not possible.
the key difference of like commercially or in terms of gameplay did it work, right? Because maybe indeed the game is absolutely fun to play, but it just didn't reach the target that it really speaks to, right? And you never know how that happens. About the game itself, you can already know if you start playtesting early, right? You start having contact with players, talking to them. For the mechanics, you will find out because things, when they are not really working out, they start echoing. The same problems keep coming back again and again. It's not something that it's just a one-off. You will find out if a lot of players encounter certain issues with certain things. But commercially, that's the bigger question mark, right? Because that's really a term that you need to reach your people.
Yes, some advice like before release, if you can afford it, if you can get some mock reviews. There's some companies who like they review your game like very professional, like very profoundly, and they usually find interesting stuff, and then do it soon enough so you can have time to react to the feedback, late enough that they can play a game that is representative as well. So that there's some things that can help you mitigate this.
Brilliant.
Thank you. My next question is, at the beginning of the whole process of brainstorming cool ideas and what to put in the game, how you get to a point where you have to clamp the ideas since everything cannot be put into the game. So what's your thought process about how do you manage to what to keep, what to leave for a sequel, or what to just throw out the bin, right?
I didn't hear it very well though.
Oh,
I was asking about planning for sequels when preparing a game, isn't it?
Yeah. So at the beginning of a game, like when you are in the whole brainstorming part, how do you know, okay, this will be put in the game, this will be thrown out, this will go to the sequel. So what's your thought process about this kind of stage?
I think you need to focus on the present and what you want to do now. Make sure that you have a complete experience, because if that's not good, you won't have a sequel, right? So start thinking about, okay, what will make a game that's complete, that's fun, and that gets enough of it. You need to develop, if you want is to start thinking about sequels, is this IP strong enough, right? Does the mechanic hold for me to start adding more twists or more development? Is this something I can expand in the future? So what you need to focus the most is having a solid base and start developing from small to big. Don't start trying to think of, too far ahead in the future, because that's one of the pitfalls, because it will make you start adding complexity that you don't need at this moment. Focusing on the simplicity of it, I think, will be key.
Yeah, I think also like it's important to know like when you start working on a game, a bit about creativity and production and realism. Like when you start, go all out. Go all out, like plan for the biggest game ever in history, like put all the ideas, don't be afraid to just go insane, then start cutting. And then start iterating, and then as closer you get to release, less ideas, less new ideas, and more like fixing and finishing stuff. And then what happens at the beginning, usually, you can start planning for a trilogy. You can do that. And then, as you said, plan for the base first. Like, what is this game right now going to be amazing? Because if this game is not amazing, there's no trilogy, right? This game is to be awesome. And then some things that you really want to do, but you don't have time. Then you think, okay, for the next one. And we do this very often. Every time we get excited about something, okay, you know what? Part 3, part 2 of the game, like the next one, because there's no time now.
Do you have any thoughts you would like to add?
Well, it's really hard. Basically, it's about structuring gameplay mechanics when what happens, right? And that's something I struggled with, and I have no answer. I just try things and then hope for the best. I cannot really.
That's absolutely fair. That's totally okay. What was your last question then?
Yeah, thank you. Very insightful. So my last question is, how do you keep your team motivation, or by default yourself, throughout the whole process? Because I think game design has a lot of stages, as in the beginning there's everything out, as you said, it's so much fun, but then you get to a point where the mechanics has to be implemented. So there's like a standby, and then at the end, you're kind of left out with, okay, let's fix stuff, let's see what's working or not. So how do you keep your team or yourself motivated through the whole process? Because I believe that motivation is a clear factor about making a good game and making it well, right?
Yeah, when you get the feeling of progress, I think that helps a lot with motivations, no? So making sure that what you're fixing, what you implement, are bits that are doable, let's say, more short term, because then you're getting wins every week, right? You're getting something new, and then showing it and coming to places like this, talking to other developers, saying, hey, what do you think? And seeing their reactions, that helps a lot with motivation, either because they're excited and you're like, okay, I'm doing something fun, or maybe there's something that's not quite working, and then you get motivated, okay, what if I fix it this way? Would that improve it, right? So I think seeking feedback is a great motivator, and also making sure that you have like smaller goals so you can get the feeling of progress and not get stuck in a 3 month task that you're just never getting over.
Yeah.
Deadlines are also a good motivator. Just knowing that, okay, I need to figure it out, and then you just do it. At some point, you reach a point where you cannot try anymore, and you just need to make a decision, and then you just hope for the best, I guess. But then you will hopefully go with the one you feel the strongest about. So sometimes, I don't know, there's a saying that pressure creates diamonds, right? And I think there's some truth to it sometimes, but we are not talking about crunch now and these kind of things. I'm just talking about sometimes it's okay to wait for a decision to happen, to think about it a while, and then at some point the pressure will come and you will just be like, okay, I will just go for this. And then it will just be a feeling you have, and you very likely you will then, if you make your own game and you work on it, you will be the person who will know the best what is best for the game, I guess. And then you will make hopefully a decision which is benefiting of what you're trying to do. So pressure helps.
Yeah, I think you both touched on very important factors. So basically, yeah, like game development can be very long. Usually when you work on big games, it's many years, a lot of people. I think it helps, as you said, having clear goals and expectations for the next milestone, as you say, and understanding, making sure everyone understands what is the measure of success. How do we feel we succeeded in this milestone? What do we need to deliver? And it's also very important to align and to explain to developers like how different every step of development is. At the beginning, crazy ideas, iterating fast, proving, doing some dirty prototypes. Later is building the stuff, then is stabilizing, and because we are very diverse as developers, some people shine in different parts of the process. If you can, try to find the people who shine in prototyping or in polishing or in stabilizing or in organizing. Find these different people and try to find interesting challenges for them always. Like you don't need the same person to do the same thing the whole process, right? You can have these people move between different projects, move different features. But yeah, like giving clear expectations and goals, it's pretty good. And then that is a great question. It's a great massive topic. Like we at IO, for example, we have like people managers who like really look into like people's progression, careers, engagement, etc. So we put a lot of effort in this, and there's many things you need to do to get people engaged, right? It's like how people feel that they own the game, that they have an impact. We have to give them some framework, like create direction, and then give enough freedom to everyone to be able to feel that they own the project.
Absolutely. Also, I would like to add, you were mentioning in your question, keeping the team motivated. I think a very important aspect to consider here is knowing your team, having clear communication, understanding what coping mechanisms and what motivates each individual within the team, and being able to uplift each other in the process, help each other reach those motivations, those objectives, because they will not look the same within it. Communication is a very big part of it, I think.
I agree. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, we have two here. We're going to first with this one, the man in the jacket.
Hi, I would like to ask something related to a bit that Eduard said. You said that game design is not a democracy, right? So you have to, if everyone on the team is trying to put something on the design or whatever, usually the vision is going to be like spread out and not something that's concise and that the player will enjoy. How do you go about projecting your vision to the rest of the team, right? So what tools and techniques do you use so that the rest of the team can understand what game you want to make?
Okay, so how do you explain the vision and the direction for the game, right? It's a good question. I think there's several ways you can go about, and you need to use all of them. It's important to know, like, we all understand things differently. So you explain one thing in one way, some people will get it, some other people will not feel it. So it's always good to have different channels to convey the same information in different ways for different types of people. So first, like, get a director who can explain, who can live what is the vision. Have it written in documentation. Send it to everyone, make sure that everyone has read it. Find references of other games, like, hey, this is going to be more or less like this more or less like that, not like this, you know? And find different channels, talk often, allow the rest of the developers to participate in this vision, to come back and forth with feedback, to ask questions. Make sure you have several meetings where you align with the different teams, and then make sure everyone is responsible for this vision as well. Like, even if you are the game director, make sure producers understand the vision, make sure the leads understand the vision, all the directors understand, and they can answer for this. So it's an ongoing process. That's how I see it.
Yeah. I completely agree. Talk to your team constantly. Make sure that they understand the game also at fundamental level in terms of themes, right? In terms of like what the experience needs to feel like. Because this will convey a lot, will answer a lot of questions of does it fit, does it doesn't fit, right? Yeah, talk to the team. Make sure, as he said, have documentation and have constant just playthroughs together, and so you can all agree, okay, we want the game to feel, darker, or this feels too, this is too funny. It doesn't really match the tone that we're going for. Play together, I think it's a good way of also get a sense of everyone understanding the game that you're making.
But also listening to your other team members is important.
Yeah.
I don't know if you see yourself as a director, or I don't know which position exactly it is. Like, I was working at a place and it was not fun at all, because there was this person at the top, and then he was like sitting next to me and like told me, oh, push it a bit to the left, push this a little bit to the right, and like nobody wants to work with those people. Like, you can have the best idea you want in the world, but just be a kind person. Like, and that's how you, I guess, communicate then also well with the rest of your team members. And if they respect your opinion, if they think that your opinion is good, and they will helpfully support you with achieving this vision, because they also want this vision to succeed, because they also like it. And when they contribute a little bit, then they will be happy to do so, I believe.
Yeah, totally. Like, give ownership to everyone. Like, we all make games because we want to make games. So make sure that all your employees or your team members, they also are making the game they want, right? In a way. And then I also wanted to like say something like, when you give direction as well, and when you're a director, you have a position of responsibility, always make sure to be very clear when you give direction and when you just talk about something. Because sometimes you want like back and forth, like give some ideas, and then some people understand that this is the direction, like, oh no, this guy wanted to do this. No, this guy was just talking with you, and direction is this. This is just some back and forth. And make sure that people feel comfortable approaching every director always to talk about stuff, to challenge their ideas, to just propose stuff. Very healthy.
Brilliant.
And never be afraid to be wrong. Like, if somebody comes from a department and proposes an idea that is better than yours, as a designer, get his idea. It's better than yours.
That's it, yeah.
You're not paid for you having the best ideas. You're paid to ensuring that the game is awesome and listening to everyone and making the best out of this, right?
Thank you very much.
Next question, please. The guy with the black t-shirt.
Thank you. As an engineer looking for getting more closer to the game design side or tech design, what advice or insights would you give me or somebody else in the same situation to pivot in that direction?
I couldn't hear it.
I couldn't hear it either.
We cannot hear it from here.
Speak up.
Oh, well, hello.
A bit better.
Okay. So I'm asking that as an engineer, I want to go closer to the game design or in a tech design position. So what's the advice or insights to pivot into that direction?
So you want to move closer to design from an engineering position. What advice? I mean, Let me think about it, because I started as a programmer as well. So I started as a programmer, and now I'm a designer. I did a lot of different things. But I think like what worked for me is that I was always interested in game design, and whenever I got a design from a designer, like one page, like something very simple, I was able to just do the rest. I will take care of it. And then usually what happens, the designers just trusted me, say, okay, just Eduard, just do this. Make the player mechanics, do the agility system. Then give feedback and stuff. So I think it's finding the way to work with the designers in some features that you work close with them. And then they get to trust you because you have good ideas. Like, okay, this guy, like, and now me as a designer, when I get a programmer who comes up with propositions and finds stuff, it's like, I can't trust this guy to take more ownership of this, right? So I think that would be my advice, like come up with proposals and solutions. And also, like, as a programmer, if you work on gameplay, you're already a designer, because there's millions of micro design decisions every day. Like, everything you code, the designer will not write the formula for you, right? How the friction works in here, how the acceleration. They don't know. They just say, hey, it goes faster when you press this button. And you have to figure out all these design decisions. So just go ahead and also talk to your lead and talk to other departments. Say, hey, I have an interest. Can I please get closer to these topics? Help with a design, tech designer, or game design. Depends on your company as well. I don't know if you have some other.
Yeah, if you're not in a position, within the same company to swap jobs, right? Also, design on your own, right? Go to game jams, make your own games at home if you can, because that gives you the portfolio that companies will be looking for when hiring designers, right? So make games, I think is the biggest advice I can give. And playing games also with the designer glasses, right? Trying to understand why they made those decisions, right? Why are the games made this way? Because that will build up your portfolio and your skill set to later move on to design positions in other companies, for example, or anything else that you would like to do.
I never changed any position at a job. I don't know. The only position I changed is from laying in bed to sitting on a chair. Sorry, I don't know.
That's fair. Okay.
Yeah, I think very good advice. Like as you say, like train yourself. Then some companies, they offer this possibility. Like at IO, for example, if somebody wants to change roles, talk to the people manager, say, hey, I'm interested in this. What can I do? Can I just do something else and provide support for this? So it depends.
Well, thank you very much, guys. We're going to move to our next question then. Hands up. Over there.
Hi, thank you very much for the talk. It was really interesting. I like to watch the videos of Masahiro Sakurai, who's the director of the Smash Brothers games. He talks a lot about game design on his YouTube channel. And one thing he talks about trying to come up with new ideas is he thinks of a certain problem that needs to be solved. Like, for example, when he thought of Kirby, he was thinking, okay, there are a lot of very hard platformer games on the NES. I want to try to make something that is more approachable for players. Is this an approach that you use when you try to come up with new ideas? Do you think that is very useful? Do you do it a bit differently? What would you say?
So if I understood, it's like if finding some problems in the current games is a good way to find a new game? Is this what you
Yes, trying to come up with a more innovative idea, maybe, in this way.
100%, of course. Like every time you plan for a new game, you have to find like why is your game worth making? It's because, as you say, like all these games are super hard but super cool, and some people are afraid to play. I want to make an approachable version. That's very, very useful. Usually when you try to pitch an idea or try to get funding or something, you have to find, again, different reasons of why your game needs to be invested on. Because there's a hole in the market, or because this is working really well, but nobody has done it in this way. Like all of this is like good reasons necessary to succeed as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yesterday I had a conversation and it was about sports games. And I don't like sports, so sports games are already not appealing to me. But the gameplay of a sport game is interesting because you learn how to play it over time, you have multiple matches or something, and you play against people and these kind of things. So in theory, a sports game is really cool. In practice, FIFA, I don't care, you know? So like, and then it's like, why not mix football with a horror game, with some other game, and then see what happens. And then it turns out it's being made, it's being done already. But still, it's like just to think about what is something interesting that could be fun, and then mix it with something that you think is cool as well. I think that's a good approach.
Yeah, in the end, it's like a challenge, right? You want to have a conversation with players. If you heard this topic 1,000 times, you get kind of bored. But if there's new questions that you're like, okay, I wonder what the answer will be like, that's kind of game design, right? How do you design for this conversation with players to keep being appealing and challenging? So yeah, picking off from what other games have done and trying to, because you're the player yourself, right? You're encountering this and you're like, oh, I wish it was that way. So trying to see, okay, let's take it on. Let's try to solve it, right? Can I find a solution? I don't know. Let's try it out, right? So start prototyping, and yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, guys. And I think we've reached the end of our session. So
Thank you. Absolutely, thank you.
brilliant. I'm sorry to say that we cannot ask many more questions because we've reached the end. But thank you so much for coming today to the panel, and thank you so much to the panelists for sharing your insights and experience in the field. Cheers.
Thank you.
Right?